What's a job that's romanticized but in reality sucks?
I strongly suspect being a spy doesn't involve half as many high-tech gadgets and spontaneous sexual intercourse as have been led to believe. Edit. Thanks for all the awards, smiley face. And wow, the way my inbox just blew up, you'd think I'd started an OnlyFans.
One former member of the CIA said the most unbelievable thing about James Bond was that he never had to file an expense report.
Anything in modern-day publishing. How many television shows and movies must I watch where the plucky young upstart graduates from college and gets a job at the magazine or newspaper of their choice and is respected and can make a living? The pay sucks. You're in constant danger of being laid off when your pub folds, usually, and it's usually a pretty corporate environment where you're tasked with multiple jobs for little hope of advancement. The names high up on the mastheads are usually those of rich people, and it's because they started off rich and could afford to stay in the industry.
I got an offer for my dream internship once, at a publishing company right out of college. Unpaid. In New York. Yeah, I can afford to move to a place with 5 times the cost of living than where I am for a full-time job for no money. Sometimes I wonder where I'd be if I'd jumped at the chance. Then I realize, homeless in NY.
I've spent 9 seasons working in Antarctica both as a graduate student and now full-time academic researcher. Everyone I tell this to immediately gets excited. And says something like, "That must be so awesome. I would love to do that." Now, first-year geoscience grad students always get incredibly excited about the possibility of doing fieldwork like this. And to be fair, most of them understand what comes with this, and still want to do it. Heck, that's where I was 15 years ago. But, and here's the but, for this kind of work, the novelty and romantic cool factor wear off after a couple of days, and the remaining 2 to 3 months of the work is absolutely brutal. You are constantly cold, hungry, dirty, and exhausted. Small cuts and abrasions don't heal properly, your fingers crack and bleed daily, you are constantly getting frost nip, and no matter how many socks and feet warmers you wear, your toes never get warm. It's organized misery in service of science. Now if you're like me and are 100% invested in the science, for me it is ice core paleoclimatology, then it's all worth it. But, if you are a 21-year-old college student that just dreams of exploring the great unknown, it can come as an enormous reality check once on continent. I've seen so many young kids quit everything for the one chance at experiencing the raw awesomeness of Antarctica, only to realize that they effectively signed up for 3 to 6 months of a lonely and difficult stint of incredibly mind-numbing work. So many of the young workers, especially in McMurdo, will sign up to do anything, just for the chance to get to Antarctica. They come to discover after a few days that they are now stuck on continent, cleaning dorm rooms as janitors or general assistants, aka laborers, handymen, only moving from one dirty building to another in McMurdo for 12+ hours shifts. What's worse, is they watch all the scientists coming through, gearing up for ridiculous deep field deployments, while they are stuck in the stinky, diesel town of McMurdo. It can make them incredibly jaded and jealous. Sure, the view across the McMurdo Sound to the Royal Society Range and Mount Discovery are beautiful, but my point is again that the novelty wears off quickly. I was stuck once in McMurdo for 18 days waiting to deploy, and I nearly went crazy. There's only so many times you can run the 5K loop around Discovery Point before it gets old. There's a reason why there are not 1, but 2 bars in McMurdo. And why every bathroom has bins full of condoms. People get lonely and depressed there. So, all this is to say, I definitely love what I do, and love remote fieldwork and the science that comes with it. But living out of a literal tent atop the Antarctic ice sheet for up to 6 months, not getting showers, always covered in a film of sticky sunblock, and always being cold and exhausted, is really hard and not at all glamorous or romantic. I'm certainly a sentimental guy, and have taken thousands of amazing landscape and scenic photos from my deployments, but I never over-romanticize the work when talking to people, especially prospective grad students. Edit. Getting lots of questions. I'll answer a couple here. I have some old pics from my 2008 to 2010 deployments. But only as partial albums in an old Flickr account. Knock yourselves out if you really want. Any album with Waze in the name was from Antarctica. Link. Asterisk, how did I get down there? I was in graduate school studying glaciology, paleoclimatology, and in some sense, geophysics. I deployed as part of a big NSF grant to extract and study an ice core record. I actually went back in 2015 to South Pole to work on that core as well. Last year, I deployed on a research ship off the coast of West Antarctica as part of an ocean sediment core team, which was also quite interesting. You can get down there as a tourist as well, see ale expeditions, but it'll cost you over 10K. The most amazing place I visited was the area around Union Glacier to work on remote seismic and GPS stations. We flew all over to tiny exposed rocks in the middle of nowhere. It was quite surreal. Most of those pics are here. Link. I watch the thing at least once a season, as is tradition. Asterisk, my little claim to fame factoid is that technically I was the first person to reach the South Pole in 2016. I went out to the marker at midnight on December 31, 2015. Which also brings up the somewhat eerie notion that while at the South Pole, literally every person alive or dead is north of you, except for maybe astronauts on the ISS? While at South Pole, I successfully completed the first every 50-mile running ultramarathon in -40°C temps. It was insanely stupid. But still kind of fun. See also here. Link. What's my job now? I still do research, but now I mostly teach at a university and work with grad students. See here. Link.
From what I've understood, being a cowboy is really awful.
Gunslingers and bandits too. Literature often portrays them as folk heroes who wore flashy, studded suits and gun belts and traipsed around towns like they owned them, striking fear into civilians and lawmen alike. However, the reality of the matter is that these guys were nothing more than common criminals and fugitives who were always on the run, could never settle down and relax, and often had only a rope or bullet to the head to look forward to at the end of their incredibly short lives.
Game tester. I worked as a game tester for EA for almost 3 years. Here's what it's like. Imagine a game type you don't like. Maybe soccer games. Maybe an RTS. Whatever. You now play that game, 8 hours a day. But you don't play it. You test it. So let's imagine an RTS. You are told to test the resource acquisition systems. All you do is click around and make sure your guys can mine gold and harvest lumber. You click around the map and mine and forest. There is no combat, they've turned that off for your testing. There is no story, because you just flick from level to test the resource system. You test using one guy. You testing using 100 guys. You make sure no other units can gather resources. You try blocking your own guys. You try killing your own guys. 8 hours a day, every day, for weeks. You enter dozens of bugs. They put out a patch that fixes the bugs. You have to retest every level and every bug to make sure they're all fixed. That's game testing.
I always had a strong suspicion that it wasn't just playing FPS games before their release all day with your coworkers.
Greater than play FPS match with coworkers. Greater than take a shot, passes through enemy's head. Greater than everybody stops what they're doing. Greater than spend an hour trying to reproduce the bug. Greater than same shot, same weapon, same position, finally get it. Greater than test every other weapon and every other character to get as much information as possible. Greater than write up detailed bug report, send to developers. Greater than get response. We can't reproduce it. Greater than have to go up to developer section and spend an hour of their time reproducing it. Greater than bug gets classified as D, known bug not going to be fixed. Greater than go home for the day.
Well, this thread is insanely depressing. Are there any good fields to go into? Lol.
The lesson is that a job is a means to support your lifestyle. If it depresses you, then don't put all of your self-worth into your career identity. Strive for work, life balance, and develop some hobbies.
Working on a film. If you're crew, it sucks. Long hours for what seem like very slow progress on the picture, lots of standing around waiting, etc. You arrive well before everyone else and leave after everyone else. If this is an indie production, you also may have to beg, chase down for your pay at the end of each week. Oh, and when the film wraps, you're now unemployed.
I'm a sound FX editor and have to say, post-production is much more forgiving. Love my job. I probably wouldn't last long on a set though.
Being a therapist. Too many people I've met get into the field thinking it's how they saw it on TV. Affluent white collar, own office, warm slow pace environment, where you get to sit on a nice comfy couch and be like, let's talk about your feelings. That's only if you get to private practice, which they don't tell you is also like running your own small business, which good luck is you have no business acumen. The reality is you get out of grad school, get your first job working at a community mental health facility because they are the only ones who will hire you with a limited license and no experience, getting paid less than $40,000 per year if you're lucky, and then get put in a walk-in closet of an office, where they dump 100 client caseload on you the first day, followed by your first client who has 5 different diagnoses and is on 12 different psych meds who says to you, F you. You're my 7th different person I've had here. Nobody cares about me. Yeah, people go into $100,000 of debt for that. Edit. I'm a therapist myself. I love what I do, but it takes years to get past all the pooty parts of the field to find your place in the field. Needless to say, too many don't survive the baptism by fire I mentioned above and either become burnt out, jaded, or leave the field altogether.
Archaeologist, specifically field archaeology. 99% of the time you find absolutely nothing. It's often physically demanding, sometimes grueling, the pay is poo, there are no benefits, you have to constantly travel, there's very little stability. I could go on. Source: have worked in CRM, Cultural Resource Management, archaeology for several years now. Edit: holy poo, this blew up. Just wanna stay, in spite of all the bullpoo of this field, still love being an archaeologist and don't really wanna do anything else for a living, but I can't universally recommend this job to everyone in good faith.
Yep. Came here to say this. Was a shovelbum for several years in the SWUS. Was fortunate that I worked on mostly interesting sites where we found quite a bit. And got to spend time outdoors in some gorgeous landscapes. But only lasted so long due to living out of pooty hotel rooms. Not making enough to afford a permanent apartment. Can't have a pet or friends, so outside work. Alcohol abuse is rampant and celebrated. One coworker did the math and figured out we didn't make enough to afford enough food to replenish the expended energy each day. Edit. Also following up to say that I don't want to discourage anyone who is interested in the field. Because it's very important work and so undervalued. Despite everything, it broke my heart to leave and I for sure thought I would be back. I ended up pivoting to an adjacent discipline in grad school. If you're okay with a long-term transient lifestyle and low pay, you'll probably do fine.
Lawyer. Number of historic, life-changing, precedent-setting cases participated in, 0. Number of angry, self-entitled, abusive clients wanting to screw each other over, 842. Number of pages of paperwork that sucked up free time and social life, 84,836.
Agreed. As a family law attorney, you see the worst poo. People squabbling over pots and pans, using kids as cannon fodder in the emotional battlefield, and clients grieving you when you make them pay the bill. Glad I got out.
Everyone used to think it was awesome that I worked in live sports TV. 70% of the people I worked with were miserable pricks with overinflated egos, and then there were the athletes.
I knew several people that worked at my local TV station. They all basically said, I got 5 minutes of training, and then I was editing the live news with no other instruction beyond, if you screw up, you're fired. Apparently the turnover rate, both voluntary and otherwise, was brutal.
People take TV way too seriously. Too seriously for me, at least. Lol, it's really pretty frivolous.
Ballerina.
Fortunately, you won't be doing it for very long.
Apparently lifeguard, because nobody can find them anymore.
Hey man, want to be responsible for a ton of lives for minimum wage in the hot sun? You're also going to be mistaken for a babysitter, mocked for trying to create a safe environment, and pressured to cover your unreliable co-workers' shifts. Where do I sign up?
Most, not all, jobs in the environmental sector. Pay is usually quite low. You tend to work in very ugly places, landfills, contaminated sites. You are expected to get jobs done in half the time you really need with as few resources as possible. And if you are consulting for other companies, nobody really wants to be working with you to save the environment. They generally are just trying to barely meet some regulations. Edit. There are definitely exceptions, as some commenters have pointed out. Some people find a niche that works out very well for them. Just sharing my personal experience and that of other environmental professionals I have known. Edit number 2. I don't mean to discourage anyone who really wants to pursue an environmental career, but I also really wish that I would have learned some of the negatives, in my comment and the many replies, before I began mine. As a result, I only lasted a few years as an environmental consultant and basically started over in a completely new field.
I was going to say something similar. I used to work for a conservation charity many years ago, taking volunteers out to do environmental work. Tree planting, tree felling, dry stone walling, coppicing, pollarding, hedge laying, you name it, all in some really beautiful places around Yorkshire. It was brilliant for a long time, but it's hard Hard work when you're doing it every day. On top of the getting the jobs done on time, we had to look after volunteers, train them, make sure they were using tools right, and keep them motivated to come back tomorrow. We had some jobs that were so rough that we tried talking volunteers out of coming along because they'd never come back if they did. When you're on the 4th day of horizontal rain on a windswept hillside in the middle of nowhere, you're down to 3 volunteers who are losing the will to live, and you know that hedge you're laying is going to be dead come summer. It really gets you questioning your life choices. Weird thing is, I'd do it all over again if I was young enough. But I'm also glad that I'm not.
Computer game development, especially testing. That is the arse end of an industry that is mostly arse.
I was gonna say video game development too. People think it's all about creativity and making something cool and fun, when the reality is a lot of bull poo. Treat em like poo, use em like toilet paper.
Journalist. Expectation. I'm gonna be the next Hunter S. Thompson and write compelling feature pieces with a unique voice and get paid to travel the world. Reality. Talking to my editor about how my contact from the cat fashion show won't call me back or do an interview unless we pay them $80 or adopt 2 cats.
What kind of cats we talking?
Architect. You think you'll be designing big fancy iconic buildings. Warehouses, Walmarts, strip malls, and poo box apartments all need architects, and that's probably what you'll end up doing.
I always wanted to pretend to be an architect.
Probably anything in the entertainment industry. It's bogged down by a lot of workers' rights violations, insane hours during crunch time, no work-life balance, and you don't even get paid much because your employers and society at large think it's a privilege to even be working in the industry.
So all of the jobs then.
Oh, you hate your job? There's a support group for that, you know. It's called Everyone. We meet at the bar.
I have 2 jobs that fit the bill. Video game tester, the pay is terrible. You sit in a dark room with no windows all day performing monotonous tests with a group of antisocial introverts. I ran out of inventive ways to submit bug reports saying, the player cannot approach closely enough to the rocket coordinates XYZ. See attached screenshot. I remember working as a group for hours to attempt to manually test an unlockable achievement, only to have the development team push out a new code build right before we finished, so we had to start all over again. Archaeologist, again, the pay is terrible. Most of the projects are tied to expanding the fossil fuel industry. Hooray, climate change. Doing Phase 1 work involves checking to see if anything of cultural value is present in a given area. I compare it to playing Battleship. You dig a hole, it's empty, miss. You dig a hole, you find something, hit. Dig around the hit, looking for other hits. You mostly dig many, many empty holes. I had to rebury my most interesting find, a Native American hearth, because it wasn't in the budget to excavate it. Due to how the laws work, that site was later bulldozed, and now there's a gas station there.
Chef, cook, poo pay. Toxic work environment. Pooty hot working conditions. Megalomaniac, incompetent management and owners. Long pooty hours. Working every weekend and every holiday. The only people you will see regularly are your coworkers. And most people descend into alcoholism or de-abuse to cope. Most people get into it because they're passionate about it, and most bosses will take advantage of this. I spent 10 years in this field. I walked away with nothing other than the knowledge I gained, then had to re-enter to workforce at the bottom at the age of 30. Been out 5 years now, and started making more money and working less hours within a year. I wish I'd left sooner.
This one I wholeheartedly agree with. Was in the kitchen for years cause I loved food and learning to cook new things all the time. Then the burnout happened real quick. Overworked and underpaid. It started taking my sanity and definitely did a copious amount of drinking and poo. Now, I am a bartender and weirdly enough, I drink way less than I used to. Also, I make more money and work less hours. I just wish bartending had health insurance.
I used to have to get on to the bartenders and wait staff about counting tips in front of the back of house. You just made more money in the 4 hours you were here than anyone back there will make in a 60-hour week. I was glad for them to be doing well, but we were literally just talking about who's got money for gas so we can make it to work this week.
Teacher. Fantasy. Emma change the world one student at a time. Reality. Poor paying zoo. Veterinary medicine. Fantasy. I get to work with puppies and kittens. Reality. A 3-month-old kitten died in my care. I've seen so much gore and blood and neglect. I've sent animals home with invasive cancers because family can't afford treatment. I've been the only comfort shelter animals knew before they left this world. It is a specific and exhausting kind of pain, and it isn't really talked about enough. People who say they couldn't do it because of the euthanasia have no idea. Edit. Thank you to those of you who were kind and respectful. I will not be interacting anymore, as recounting some of this is a little emotionally exhausting. But I'm going to plug this link for anyone, vet med or not. Link. Have a good night everyone, and be kind to all living things.
On the flip side, as a pet owner, when I find a really great, empathetic and clearly skilled vet, I appreciate them so much and stick with them as long as I can, usually until they more or relocate their practice. I can only imagine how difficult of a job it is, but I hope they know how comforting it is when you can trust your vet. You won't truly appreciate it until you move or have to find a new one.
Actor, actress. Most don't make it big, and many have very short career spans, then fade into obscurity.
Lawyers. Everyone thinks that it's like Suits. Reality. Reading papers for hours and running behind clients in order to get them to come to the appointment. Source. My dad.
Ob-Gyn Sonographer. You get to scan little unborn babies all day. Then you have an excited parent eagerly watching my face and looking at the screen, asking all sorts of cute questions while I calmly tell them I can't relay any results to them as I stoically measure a fatal abnormality, or record a motionless heart, etc. Things they don't teach you in ultrasound school. Keep a pleasant expression that does not reveal anything negative about the exam, but that also does not create a false sense of positivity. And do not, by any means, cry. Edit. WOA. This got a lot of attention. This has never happened to me before. Thank you to those mentioning appreciating what I do. It honestly felt really good to read that. A lot of you have been sharing your experiences getting ultrasounds or other diagnostic imaging performed. Thank you for sharing such personal stories. To those who went through or are going through something difficult, I am rooting for you. I strive every day to be the best sonographer I can be for patients just like you or your loved ones. To the current and soon-to-be ultrasound students, message me if you have any questions about the career, clinical rotations, licensing exams, etc. It has its emotional hurdles, but that's healthcare and medicine for you. I genuinely love my career, and I also love talking to ultrasound students. To those who say this profession isn't romanticized, my bad lol.
Reading the comments, all jobs really sucks.
Honestly, there's a whole lot of office jobs out there that are pretty unremarkable, but the pay is okay to excellent. You get to work in an air-conditioned office. Job security is pretty good. It doesn't wreck your body. It's usually not too stressful, and you don't have to be available outside of office hours. Also, you may be able to get away with only doing 1 to 4 hours of real work every day. It's not the most glamorous life, and it's often not particularly meaningful work, but the work conditions are pretty good.
Game development. I went to school for it but did not pursue it after and went into something else with transferable skills. My roommate in college is a successful developer and has been for years. He gets fired every time the game comes out and the studio dissolves, which constantly happens. The level of skill required to do his work is about as hard as it gets in terms of programming, yet he gets paid less than a web app developer. Devs are a dime a dozen now, since literally every kid goes to school for CS, so if he doesn't like it he can leave because some fresh grad that's willing to work 100 hours a week would be happy to take his place. They need unions. The worst part? He hates gaming now. That's suicks.
Scientist. The dream is you come in every day searching for truth and answers to life and the universe's fundamental problems. The truth is you are stuck in a no-win situation of having to publish like crazy, write grants that are expected to support your work and the whole university, while also handling a teaching load, fending off toxic colleagues, doing service, and getting a destructive administration off your back. Everywhere you turn is criticism and blockages. Your papers and grants are rejected, your students poo on you in your teaching evaluations, you go into every faculty meeting already gritting your teeth because your colleagues on the other side of whatever faction are going to try to shut you down about everything. You can always go into industry and make quite a chunk of change, but people give up a lot of creative aspects of their work. There is nothing wrong with science being another job where you are part of the larger mission of your company, including making a profit. It's just not what people think being a scientist is like.
Musician. Show up at club at 5 p.m., or earlier, unload, setup, mic check, wait hours for show to start, get pooty bar food or local fast food, play to half-empty room, tear down, load into vehicles, hopefully get paid enough to cover expenses, leave club 2 to 3 a.m., covered in sweat and physically exhausted, either drive to another location or pooty hotel. Lather, rinse and repeat. It's a grind for 99% of the musicians out there. My God, I miss it though.
I effing hate it. But I also love it. When you're getting paid well, it's 100% worth it. Starting out it sucks because you get $100 for a few weeks work pretty much. It gets better as you get more professional and learn how to haggle for price and show up to a show with minimal practices because everyone knows the songs. If you want to make money playing music, be in a wedding band.
Doctor. Fantasy. Asterisk, I make lots of money, everyone respects me. Reality. Asterisk, I watch people die every day, work exhausting 12-hour shifts, have crippling depression and multiple addictions.
Worked at a hospital for a few years, was surprised at how many doctors were chain smokers as well as adamant about having a DNR.
Most of these are something I think most wouldn't romanticize honestly.
Museum jobs. Fantasy is that you're working at a really cool place, with cool people, with decent pay. Reality is you work at a really cool place, with lots of older assholes who get paid decent money while the younger generation gets paid like crap and has zero career advancement options until the older generation dies. Add in internal staff and donor politics, and you have a place ripe with resentment.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.